We are really, really fortunate today to have Dr. Allott here to talk to us about well, she could say it much better than I can, but protein and just taking care of yourselves and how that impacts the people that we work with and how we can help them be more successful in our system. She is coming to us because of the Court Improvement Training Academy. And they're at the University of Washington, and they have helped bring her here today, and we are so excited. I've been fortunate enough to see this presentation or a version of this presentation several times, and it is what inspired our court to work with the food bank and family education support services to start our food cart so that parents and youth who come on our dependency calendars can have some healthy snacks when they are here for court. And so just super excited. And do you want to say a little more about Dr. Allott?
Sure. My name is Kelly Warner-King. I'm co-director of the Court Improvement Training Academy, and we're thrilled to be here and to be supporting your work with protein. Happy to think about new ways to do that too, so if anything strikes you, let us know. Dr. Allott is a physician, a naturopath. She also has a background working with adults and kids with mental health needs, and she's been on the circuit here in Washington State. We started using her for judges because she worked with CEOs and executives around how to improve their performance and their decision making. And so we introduced this to our judges, and we had parent allies who were there in the audience, and they said, wait a minute, we need this for families too. And so we've broadened it to include professionals and families. So Dr. Allott is a wonderful speaker and expert and also consultant for us working with programs in courts across the state, and we're happy to think about, as I said, other ideas and ways to utilize her big mind and expertise.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And Judge Stowler, thank you so much for the introduction and the invitation. It's really thrilling to come and talk to you. I'm really, my passion is optimizing brains and bodies, right? And I often lead like, who would like to have 10% raise of their salary? Anyone? Right? Oh, right. And so what if, and I can't do that for you. I wish I could. But if you could have 10% more energy in your day, like, that's almost as good as 10% more income. And for some people, that's better than 10% more income, because getting more energy back is really hard, particularly when you're in a complex system as being in the court system. And everybody is being exposed to really hard things day after day after day. And everybody in this room makes a living by making decisions. We're not making a living anymore by working our bodies. We're making a living by making decisions through our brain and our mind. And so today, I'm going to first want to speak to you, because if you can feel better, then the people that you connect to can feel better too. And if it works, then if you happen to be in a position working with a parent who's just 2 days in recovery from meth or heroin and had their kids taken away and they're trying to get it together, and you're like, wow, before you go to court, you really just want to have a handful of nuts so your brain can understand what's happening. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to cover today, and then give you really concrete tools about how to make that possible. So I know that I'm taking your lunch hour. I'm really, really sorry that I'm taking your lunch hour, but there are nuts in the back, and if that bowl runs out, there are more nuts. So like, just get up and go get more nuts. I don't care, right? The other thing, we have lots of paper today. So this is Optimize Your Brain. We'll go over what that's for. Then you have 3 handouts on keeping your brain fed best at court. This is really for parents. There's one for visitations, and there's one for evaluations. And so you can use those and hand those out. You also have my PowerPoint, so that if you thought this was interesting, you can go to your office and say, yeah, this doctor said something, and you can read it. The other thing that's back there, that Kelly and I are really excited about is this year, because there's Thurston County and there's Spokane and King County, and there are these counties that are just decided that it's important to feed people. And so we've started a Protein for All website. And it's just the beginning. It has one of my talks in it. It has a couple of podcasts. This is really directed at parents, for those who have smartphones, and you can say, hey, here's a website. You're sitting in the lobby for an hour. You might want to watch this. And it also has some parent allies talking about their first court experience. And it was recorded at the Children's Justice Conference, if you happen to see that talk. So you can take as many of these as you want, as you think that you're going to hand out. And lastly, we are trying to, funding. Everybody understands funding issues, right? And so where we are in the funding cycle is that we need to know who thinks this is an important program. And so we're asking people to sign up for our newsletter. There's my personal newsletter, which is Dr. Allott's, and that's my private stuff. But then there's the Protein for All, and you can decide if you want to be on either of those, and that's outside. Okay.
The other thing that's outside are CLA credits.
And CLA credits. So, okay, that was way too much not on the point stuff. So, let's talk about why we're here. I'm going to talk to you about why food, sleep, and exercise actually counts for your brain. We're going to talk about how hypoglycemia impacts decision making, and we're going to talk about the handouts. And I need to fix this so that I'm not always turning my back. I almost have this memorized, but not quite. So we have a mind, we have a brain, we have a body, and then we have our relationships. We all know how relationships can energize us or drag us down, right? And we all know when our body is sick that we don't really have a brain or a mind anymore, right? We've all been that sick, right? And so I kind of think of the mind as software. So right now I'm sharing some software. We're downloading some new software into your mind. And if you practice it long enough, you're going to have some new hardware in your brain where you just habitually like, where's my protein? And then your body will have more energy, and maybe relationships will move more smoothly. So that's kind of the frame that I use. Since I'm a doctor, I always have to show some studies. So we're just going to briefly go through some studies. What scientists have found is that when people are hypoglycemic, which means that their blood sugar is dropping because they either haven't eaten or because they're pre-diabetic or diabetic, that can happen. What you see is decreased attention span, decreased emotional regulation, inability to cope with stress, more aggression, more criminality, more impulsive behaviors, more addictive behaviors. Does this remind you of anyone? Maybe your teenager? Or the parents? Or sometimes ourselves, right? And glucose, or sugar, is really important for self-control. And so they did this really interesting study where they made people do an exercise that required self-control. And basically that's our lives. I don't know about you, but like generally I'm trying to control myself. Like I don't get to do whatever I want, right? And when you do an act of self-control, right, sit through something that you don't want to be in, sit across from somebody who's highly emotional, you are burning your blood glucose. Our brain consumes 20% of our total calories per day. So that's 20% of your calorie budget's going to your brain, right? And so then if they ask you to do another act of self-control, so let's say you're talking to somebody really emotionally challenging, you get up and you have to go into the next room and do that again, guess what? Your impulse control and self-control is going to not be so great, right? But if you get some sugar, you go back to your standard place, right? So who do I see walking around with 64 ounces of Coke, right? Who I see doing that are homeless people, low-income people, in people with a lot of trauma, because basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to get their brain glucose all the time because they are so on the edge. They don't have a system saying, be here, do this now, right? Because their lives are highly chaotic. And so it helps them with self-control. And then we badmouth them for getting obese and having diabetes. It's crazy. So when I started my practice, I started my practice 12 years ago, and I wanted to address the physical causes of mental health because I thought that there should be something other than meds and therapy. And so I started just looking at the physiology, and the physiology between anger and anxiety and hypoglycemia has a high degree of overlap. I was like, well, then we're going to address hypoglycemia and see if people get better. And I had really complex people on 5 psychotropic meds and years of therapy, and some food made a big difference, like 30 to 50% difference. So we're going to talk about how that happens. So if you have somebody who has panic attacks or anger attacks, we'll call that 10 out of 10. If they can get some food in them, the highest it'll get is about 7. Often it'll knock that down to 50%, where then they have some cognitive control, right? So when people come in and they're really like, I try and get them some food, just so that I can be in the room with them. So I don't know if you noticed, but I just made a really good argument to eat sugar all the time. Yes? Yeah, I just did that, right? We eat sugar all the time. And we are probably doing that. You know, that's why that bowl of candy, I don't know who has it here, but someone. And you're like, oh, I'm just going to have one piece. And then you go to work the next day and say, I'm not going to have one piece. Oh, it's just one piece. And rather than saying you're lazy, stupid, dumb, whatever the kind, like, oh, I may need this for what I'm dealing with, right? Like this may actually be a maladaptive coping mechanism, but a coping mechanism. The problem with eating sugar all the time is that studies are coming out that if you eat processed foods all the time, you're going to be depressed, which, depending on who you are, is better than anxiety and anger, but not very functional, right? And really expensive to you as well as your employer. And expensive because it leads you towards diabetes. And diabetes decreases our ability to make decisions and our attention span and adds to depression. This is one of my favorite studies. So there's this researcher, Felice Jacka, who came out with a study that was like, wow, if you eat processed food, you're going to be depressed. And everybody was like, well, that was a retrospective study, so it's worthless because you just made up your own data. So she said, fine, I'm going to go get 3,000 adolescents. And this is going to be a prospective study, and we're going to look at their diet quality, and we're going to follow them over the number of years. And if they had a poor diet quality, guess what? They had crappy mental health scores. And over the time, if they improved their diet, their mental health scores went up. And if their diet went from good to bad, everything went from good to bad. What do you know? So eating real food counts. Of course, when you're living on an income of $500 a month, that's not really possible, but that's a whole other thing. So this is the study that got me into talking to CEOs and judges. So they took a group of judges and said, and they were reviewing files for parole, and said, do you approach each file, unbiased and as neutral as possible? Of course they do. And so they studied them over a group of time, and what they found is immediately after a meal, 65% of the files were considered for parole. And immediately before a meal, 0. Right? Now, every once in a while I get invited into a law firm and I present this study and the hands go up and they're like, okay, so if I want a judge to decide something in my favor, when do I put that before them? I'm like, probably right after the meal. They're like, how do I get that information? I'm like, I think they're called clerks. But I don't know. The cost of depression is loss of 27 days of work per year. And I just want to put that out. And that's not missing work. What that's called, there's absenteeism and then presenteeism, which means that you're there, but you're not. And that's 2 hours a day, right? So when I talk to you about 10% of your income and 10% more energy, that's really what we're talking about, because a lot of depression is really fatigue.